Hey there, it's Vashti Sarah. Welcome back to Post Blog. If this is your first time listening, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, like button, follow button, share button, all the buttons to stay connected with the Post Blog podcast. And for those of you who this is not your first time, welcome back. Hey y'all, welcome back to Post Blog Podcast. Again, this week what we'll be doing is we're going to be listening to different women who are woman bosses, girl bosses, just dominating the world in their field and just stepping out of the norm of an 8 to 5 and saying, I'm just going to go for it. I don't care about what anyone else has to say. I'll take the risk. I'll jump right in and have that water walking kind of faith. Today, we'll be chatting with Phoebe Abraham. I know her from SAGU. It's the university I attended in Waxahachie. And right now, she's in the works of doing some pretty big things. And I'm honored that I get to share it on my podcast. So that's awesome. And hopefully you guys will be inspired by this and will see at least, or just be motivated to do big and greater things. So Phoebe, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, what's your business, and what's your why?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Vashti. Vashti at SAGU. My journey kind of started at SAGU, where I went to school for a while there, transferred to a school in Florida, Southeastern. I studied government and ministry, which is completely different from what I'm doing right now in design. Mm-hmm. But I moved back to Kansas City, where I grew up and where my family originally is. And I began pursuing fashion at this time. I've always been growing up, I went to fashion events. I would sketch all the time, took a lot of art classes. And I knew I would do fashion one day and be in design one day. But during COVID 2020, I started to plan out a lot of things, went through many manufacturers, and really started the journey of beginning my lifelong dream of being a designer. And so currently now I design. I found an amazing manufacturer overseas. I do wedding dresses, special event dresses, which can mean couture gowns, mm-hmm. red carpet, pageant dresses. And so I feel like drowning in ruffles in the best possible way. Mm-hmm. But so far that's I'm set to launch here at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. But it's been a very long process. When you think of business, there's a lot that goes into it. Yeah. And you really, truly don't know till you actually walk in it. But my why behind it is just for the little girl, for the 7-year-old me who's always wanted to do this. I'm also from an immigrant family. My family's from Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. And, migrating here, as all immigrants, you want the best for your children. Mm-hmm. And, the opportunity and motivated by that I'm in a country where I can pursue those dreams. And I could see, my dreams becoming a reality. Mm-hmm. And in just knowing that it's bigger than fashion at the end of the day. When I'm designing dresses, somebody will wear this for their wedding day. Wow. And knowing that it's a special treasure. And so at the end of the day, it's truly motivating to know that this is bigger than me and this will bless someone in some way.
Yeah. And you might have cut out a little bit, but do you have a business name as yet?
Yeah, so everything will be under my name, Phoebe Abraham. Okay. So this will be a dress line. I will sell online through stores locally and then out of Kansas City. There's stores that I've talked to in New York, and this will be centered mostly online and then through stores. I'm still thinking to maybe do a local store. I'm on the fence about that, but It will be Phoebe Abraham would be the line, and then we would sell through stores. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And being someone that is an immigrant as well, my family originally from Belize, we moved when I was 17. And, same thing is that I want to set up a future for my children. I'm not even thinking about myself. It's for my children and my children's children, because I know what I came from, where I came from in that struggle. And, being in a country or a being in a country where the possibilities are endless, why not take
Yeah.
advantage of that?
Yeah, it's all about taking advantage and taking that step. And as you said, for your kids, like it's for the next generation too. Like we're setting the tone, and that begins with a lot of sacrifice being, the first generation.
Right.
But it's like the road we pave has a lot to do with it. And the harvest for it it's really a lot.
Yeah. So on that note, what mistakes have you made so far in starting up your business and gearing up to launch Dana this year?
Yeah, so I think in any business, especially when you start, there's a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
For me I'm like a planning girl. I have my schedule and my checklist, and when something is delayed, I'm even in the beginning, I would get really upset. And especially in 2020, when there were so many manufacturers delayed and backed up. And once I found the manufacturer, they were telling me to make a dress, it was going to take 3 months versus 3 weeks, prior to COVID. And so just being patient in that time and knowing that I can do something while I'm waiting, or if things don't go as planned, it doesn't mean all is, bad and crashing down. And just being like flexible with your time or with your checklist, I would say, that was a really big thing for me, is just being patient. I think it was a quote that I read. It was like, your attitude in the waiting matters.
Yep.
And it's, if you're in a constant state of dwelling on those mistakes, you're not moving anywhere. And for me, it was a decision that I had to make, was like, okay, there's a mistake here and I have to be patient in this area, but what can I do in the meantime?
Yeah.
I think like in any business, mistakes are unavoidable, but knowing that mistakes and problems are opportunities to grow, it makes all the difference. Mistakes with any successful business, they're stepping stones. And I think sometimes we try to avoid it and run away from it. In reality, it really gives you wisdom, to not repeat it or to do it a better way. But that was a big thing for me to know. I can make a checklist, but if something goes wrong or there's a mistake or problem, it's not the end of the world. That was a big thing too, a big hurdle to get over, but it really helped me once I got over that.
Yeah. And that's a good point to highlight on, because I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people don't step out and do. It's because of that fear of failure. But you hammered it, you hammered the nail on the head in saying that failure allows us to grow. And I mean, James 1 makes that very clear. Count it all joy when you go through trials of many kind, because it produces perseverance and maturity. That's what we gain from trials. That's what we gain from our mistakes. It's growth, and we shouldn't run away from that.
Yeah, it's a powerful revelation. If I would say, like, knowing your mistakes, like God can use those and turn them around. And we learned that from Solomon too, who, he had a lot of wisdom, but he made a lot of mistakes. And it just goes hand in hand.
So what would you say is one of the hardest business decisions you've had to make so far?
For me, it was prioritizing my time. I feel like when you have something, a passion or a dream you're pursuing, it takes a lot of time. And I, was involved in a lot of outreaches, just different life things I was involved in. And I really had to prioritize, okay, I can't go out with friends this day. I can't go to an event. I can't travel to this place. And it's just the small things we have to lay down, the daily sacrifices we make. And I think for me, the time aspect of it was a big thing, especially like even now is like canceling some things or sacrificing things to get to where I want to be. Especially, as a person who for example, in every dress, I want to pour out my heart in it and I want it to be perfect. And you can tell when something, is rushed versus perfected or to the point you want it to be. And for somebody who wants everything to, be my heart being poured into it, there were things I had to lay down and just, now I'm at a place where I'm like, okay, I could see what prioritizing time is.
Yep.
And it makes all the difference when you look at your business, from a different view.
Yeah.
Is, you really have to be careful where your time is going.
Yep. You can't say yes to everything. And I've had to learn that the hard way, and unfortunately getting burnt out. And that's not that you don't want to hit rock bottom, because that's what burnout is. And I've had to be strategic with when I say yes, and learn to be okay with people being disappointed in you, because I've had friends who are like, you never hang out, you never show up. I'm like, well, I'm working on stuff. I can't attend everything.
Yes, totally. I've had to have many conversations that way. And it's, in the long run, you see that it's worth it.
Yep.
And majority of people understand, but it's definitely sacrifice was a big part of it.
Yeah. So what would you say, or what would you give as your best advice to someone who wants to be like you and just step out and go for it, who wants to be a woman boss, who has that dream, that big desire to do something? They have the talent, but they just don't have that oomph, they just don't have the courage to take that step to go for it. What would be your advice?
Yeah, so I would say, we have one life to make a difference, one life to pursue what you want. And as every day goes by, we lose a day to not be who we're called to be. And I would just say nothing is ever easy stepping out into what you're called to do, or stepping out into that passion. And you may not have people around you even support you if that is the case, but it's not something that happens overnight.
Yeah.
It's hard work. You put a lot of, heart and blood and sweat and tears into it. But in the end, there's a result for it. I think the big part of this is perseverance. Perseverance will get us further, during delays and setbacks. And I think the biggest part, even for me, is in the middle of that, to circle back to the passion, regardless of financially, if it's hard, or creative wise, if it's hard, or whatever the challenges may be in pursuing that dream or that business, it's circling back to that passion and trying to figure out, why you started this, or the passion behind why you're starting. Nothing just happens with little effort.
Yeah.
And I think, but your dreams are worth it. Any dream is worth it to take that step. And I understand how that feels, because I feel like for a long time, I put this dream aside and I waited for the perfect time. And then it was like, there's no perfect time.
Yep.
It's, you have to have some kind of, plan, and then step out.
Yeah.
And it's being courageous. Like, it takes a lot of courage to do, but it's definitely worth it when you're doing this for something bigger.
Yeah.
But I definitely do believe that, it's worth it. And there's so many people, I feel like I saw this, it was this story of a guy who was walking through a graveyard, and, somebody that was with him, he's a pastor, and he was like, this is really sad, because imagine how many people in this graveyard, never pursued their dream or started that business or whatever it may have been, because the fear of failure or the fear of what will people think. And it's a really, it's real thoughts that we go through. It's real thoughts that I went through.
Yeah.
That, we don't have that much time, and, we really have to believe in ourselves.
Yeah. And I think the key is living today as if today is your last day of life. That way you give it your all.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I also wanted to touch on, you mentioned perseverance is the key. And I like that, because again, in James, it says, let perseverance finish its work. Perseverance is what brings out the finished product. It is what brings things to completion. So you're spot on. perseverance is what we need in order to walk or dream out and to make it a reality.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Perseverance, it takes us farther than what we could ever do. Especially, as a believer, when your faith is not in yourself.
Right.
And especially if okay, God has planted this seed in me and he can take this further than I can.
Yeah.
And it's just gazing your eyes on, what God has called you to do versus what you could do in your humanly possible way. Another thing I think is the game of comparison. Comparison really robs us of what miracles are happening in our own lane. People always say, the grass is greener on the other side, but we never ask, how did that person make it green?
Wow.
And I think we can just learn from people around us who are in business, and rather than see them as competition, see them as inspiration.
Wow.
And for me personally, this is my biggest strength, and I think has made all the difference. And even in my business walk is any person that I meet, whether it's like a networking event or a fashion show, whether I know them or not, I'm so inspired by them.
Yeah.
And even people who are freshly starting business like me, if they're doing amazing, I'm not going to focus on, their business is booming and, this and that.
Yeah.
And, I'm still here starting. And that's what I mean, that it really robs us. It takes a lot of things for you to get to where you are, the sacrifices you've made.
Yeah.
And we forget it in that small moment when we compare. It's like, you've done X, Y, and Z to get here. And I think comparison, it really kills a lot of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be one of my main things.
I like that a lot. And you are spot on. This generation, especially, rather than driving on the highway and being in our car and looking at the road, we're looking left and right. And that's why we fail. That's why we crash. That's why we get discouraged. It's because we keep looking left and right and we're not focused. And rather than cheering the person on that's next to us, like you said, we're comparing ourselves to them. And what happens?
Yeah.
Our business gets affected by that. Our dream gets affected by that. And obviously our perseverance and passion will too, because we've lost sight of our why.
Yeah, so true.
But yeah, that's awesome. I love all your pointers, and honestly, I can't wait to see what the Lord does with your business. And, fashion is a very unique industry, and it's not a fad. There are things that, there's something about fashion that's just beautiful and unique. My husband and I actually just probably a couple days ago got done watching Devil Wears Prada, and one of my favorite movies. But,
I have yet to see that movie.
Oh, you need to. But they talk about fashion and more than just a clothing or a brand that you wear, but the very fabric of how it was thought through and just intricately designed. And, I just never thought about fashion that way until I heard one of the actors say, and I'm like, oh, golly, that's true. Wow. Because that's someone's business, but it's not just a business, it's their passion, and they see a big vision behind it. And it's what drives our fashion industry today, what we like, what's in, and but I'm excited for you. I can't wait to see all the things they're going to do, and someday see your name on the red carpet, and I'll be like, you know what? I interviewed Phoebe. I did.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. That's very encouraging.
Well, keep on keeping on, and we'll keep in touch. Any last words?
No, I would just say have fun in whatever you do. Business is hard. Being an entrepreneur in general, it's hard. And just celebrating success, small or big, and having grace for yourself. I would say that's a really big thing, is at the end of the day, give yourself grace.
Yeah. Well, with that said, thank you so much, Phoebe. And I hope y'all enjoyed today's episode. Hope y'all are encouraged, and go do that thing. That's it for today, guys. Thank you for joining me on Post Blog. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like button, follow button, share button, all the buttons to stay connected on the Post Blog podcast. Same time, same place next week. I love y'all. But remember, God loves you most.